This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein, a longtime journalist and a mom of three. Today is a special episode because I am really excited for you to meet the people behind this podcast. They are parents working hard to do the best for their kids, trying to figure it out as they go, just like all of us. On our team, it's three of us, Megan Littlefield and Nate Eldridge and me, and collectively we have kids that range in age from little kids just starting out in kindergarten to young adults. And that age range really helps to shape the topics that we take on. The concept of this podcast is to say the quiet parts of parenting out loud, those things that we feel insecure about not knowing, leaning on the experts to share our confusion, the stress and anxiety, and of course, the joy of raising a family today and gaining valuable insight from their knowledge and their expertise. What sticks with us most from the experts is as unique as our own parenting experience, but also insightful and applicable. So check it out. This is our team and some of our top takeaways so far on Raising Me. Well, listen, this is a really exciting episode, I think, because we get to introduce everybody to Megan and Nate, who are really the brains behind the operation.
Not really.
Megan, of course, she is editor from day one of Raising Me, and Nate is one of our producers on the show who, you know, the beauty of working with Nate and Megan is that we all have kids in this wide range of raising children, starting at 5 up to Nate, your oldest is 19. Yeah. So first introduce yourselves and sort of what it's like being part of this parenting journey.
Well, I can go first with that. Having a 19-year-old, the trials and tribulations that I find might be a little bit different than the 5-year-old now that you have. But I've been through that in a different stage. And now all this information that we're gathering with technology that is available to the children, but also available to us, alters the way I interact with my kids. It alters the way that we have, dinner together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes my daughter will put me in her TikToks because she thinks I'm funny.
She does.
I think it's wonderful. So it's and all the guest experts that we bring on, there's little nuggets of information that I can take and apply to me as a parent.
Yeah,
and that's why I think like every parent can always learn more about how to be better. There's no perfect parent.
And don't you feel like you blink, you probably remember when they were 5 years old or 2 or 3 or whatever, and blink, and now here you are doing TikToks with your 18-year-old, your 16 and 19-year-olds.
Exactly. Yeah. I blink and remember 5 and wish it was back because I have so much more information now and how I could have been better then.
You know what? And I'm coming from our 5-year-old is our third, and I come at it at a much different place than I did when we had our 16-year-old, because you do learn to appreciate it more because the time goes so fast. Yeah. And Megan, you have elementary school kids.
Yes, I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Tell us about your parenting journey and just being.
I like to listen to it every week and edit it because I'm learning something every time we do it, and it's been really interesting, and definitely glad I'm keeping my kids off of social media with all the stuff that we've learned, and that's been exciting.
Social media is like constantly a topic. It keeps coming up in so many different ways because you can't avoid it. Nate, obviously your children are on social media. I have one in that space. 2 more, thankfully, are not interested, or even maybe my 12-year-old's kind of close. But, speak to that too, Nate. Like, we really
avoided going into the social media space with our 16-year-old. But it gets to a point where I find that it's really hard to avoid social spaces with your kids. As much as you don't want to do it, it is part of the growing up experience.
Yeah. And as some of the experts that we will talk about today brought up, for me, with a 19 and a 16-year-old, the data that is now available to us, and the data such as the Surgeon General's warning, wasn't available then. And there was a feeling that it was so seductive and so alluring. I was being pulled into it, and it didn't feel like, here, go ahead, have the keys, take the truck down the road as fast as you want. It just, that's what it felt like. But I also didn't really have a lot of control over it. My son was first. He went down into gaming, but it also became kind of during COVID when he was 14, it was a way for him to connect with his social circle. And it was really important for him to have that. With my daughter, if I could have held off a little longer, maybe I would have, looking back now, but she is the one that I have to pull out of these social circles a little bit more and be a little bit more concerned.
In person or in social media?
Social media. Because it is so prevalent. It is, while they are socially present with each other, physically present with each other, they're also
on the phones. Doesn't that drive you nuts?
It does. Yeah. So I encourage her to, get into dance, get into activities that don't involve that. You can't really focus on choreography if you're looking at your phone. So she's forced to put it down. She's forced to do other things. And she still finds enough time to dive down these holes to drive me crazy. But, that's the nature of it.
The takeaway, Megan, is delay it as often as, for as long as you possibly can, because it's like you blink and they're asking for it.
Yeah.
I think we ripped the Band-Aid off when it was around 12. We got a joint TikTok account. This was around COVID, and we were making videos together as a way so that I could learn how to do it and what's happening too. I mean, now she's, the Band-Aid's totally ripped off. Let's just be real. But, it brings up a good point about your first takeaway, Nate, with just a really great guest, Tanya Jordan.
Tanya Jordan of Bark Technologies. She was wonderful. And she talks about, she gives us a little credit as parents in our generation. And in this clip, she talks about something that I was just blown away by, because we can be a little bit softer on ourselves. And she'll tell us why.
You don't have to give your child access to XYZ, and they don't need to have all the things all at once. So don't hesitate to delay. Your child will be fine if they have to wait a little bit longer than their peers to have access to what we know is harming them. And then, those candid conversations, remaining calm, talking about the hard things more frequently. And then when it is time to give your child access, again, use parental controls, use filters, use monitoring. And then finally, it's so hard, right? You and I spend a lot of intentional time in this space. And we're still struggling as parents. And to that point, there's a Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World that I started a few years ago and now has over 440,000 parents in it. That is such a wonderful place for community and education where we can lean on each other, because we're the first generation of parents parenting in a world like this, and we've got to figure it out together.
I find that fascinating and so profound. And to me, it was, she has a lot of data at her fingertips and a lot of information that she can gather, and gotta relax. We're the first people that have this. We can't look to our parents. I mean, my parents are boomers. They have no idea.
Boomer.
Yeah, exactly. And so for someone with that kind of technological breadth and awareness and education, to say we're the first.
Yeah.
This is new. It's new to us. It's new to our kids. Take a breath. It's not. It's here. Yeah. You can't control all of it, but there are people out there and resources out there that you can go to and find some help with.
What comes up for me too when I hear about that, and I got the chills again, because it is just, we are the first generation of parents parenting in this world, and we've got to figure it out together. I mean, that is such a great quote. But it's this idea of giving ourselves grace. And that has come up in multiple episodes, that we've done. The seasonal stress one comes to mind, where we're all freaking out, trying to make everything perfect. It's like, just give yourself a little grace. We are on this parenting journey together, whether it's social media or really anything. Like, we don't get a guidebook in all of this. So we've got to figure it out together. So, and often the solutions, especially when it comes to social media, is, we hear a lot about the mental health impact, and it feels like a really big, scary thing. How do we make this work? It can be really simple. The solution, the help.
Yeah.
If we peel back the layers, is really about connection.
Yeah.
And one of the other expert guests that we had on that had a profound impact on me was Dr. Michael Rich, who in this clip that we'll hear gives us some advice that has been right there the whole time.
Instead of having limited screen time making the forbidden fruit, we should have minimal non-screen time. Planned minimal non-screen time when we are certainly in bed and asleep, time when we are at a meal, a sit-down family meal together once a day at least is the single most protective thing you can do for your kids' mental health, let alone their nutrition. Because we all need to download, we all need to break bread together. I mean, this is a tradition that has spanned centuries, this business of sharing a meal, but also sharing your hearts. Then when you cover all the things that need to be done and see how much time is left, what you're doing here is helping the child learn to prioritize, knowing that there is actually a finite amount of time in a day. There are only 24 hours in a day, and you need to get things done. So I talk about it as filling an empty glass with 8 or 9 hours of sleep, with that family meal, with homework, with strenuous physical exercise, and obviously there's school, and then see what time is left. And what you're doing there is having the young person prioritize what she or he wants in a planful way, and frankly, learning to manage time, which God knows all of us could do better.
Amen. Amen to that.
I love that notion. The single most important thing you can do for your child's mental health is to have a sit-down family meal together. And it's so simple. You gather together and break bread. And I try to keep this like, all right, no phones at the table. I'm the one that usually breaks it because my kids say something funny and I have to photograph them. and I do that with my phone. But oftentimes my daughter will do the same thing, and I will find some spark of what I think is creativity, and she has to make a TikTok out of her crazy dad. So now it's just a way that we it's a tool that we use to bond together. But it does give us dinner time, gives us time to decompress and to be one with each other. And I thought that was really profound.
You've brought that up on a number of episodes. Yeah. It was one of those things that really stuck with you. It stuck with me too. And I know as kids get older, it gets more challenging to have these dinners together when, I have one driver, she's off doing something with her friends or at track or here or there. My other one's doing soccer. So really, you do have to be intentional with it as the kids get older.
Yeah. I have to be very intentional with it with my oldest, who's now 19. And there is this theory floating around that the time spent with your kids or with a family, you get 18 years with these people that you've made, and then they're off on their own, and chances are you might get another year for the rest of your life combined.
Oh.
So
that's a
uplifting thought. Thank you, Nate.
I intentionally take him out to dinner often. So and at restaurants, it's just him and I, and we, he's in school in Boston, so I'll find a restaurant and I'll head down to Boston and we'll go out to dinner and I'll drive home. And that's how I get 2 hours with my 19-year-old son, who has a life that does not involve me anymore.
Oh my gosh. What a way to think about it. Killing us here, Nate. Thanks so much. What a pleasure. Well, plus, college student, meet them where they are.
They are.
And look, this is a college student. I'm sure he's not making a ton of cash,
No.
So if you can fill that, what you get out of it is this connection with your son. What he gets out of it is a free meal. But what he's going to look back on is say that he did get that time with his dad.
I think it is sad to think that we only have 18 years, but it's also our job to like build their wings and fluff the nest so that when they leave, they can fly and you know that they're okay. So, you know, if he's like starting to swoop low, I come in and get him a meal, like talk to him, and I kind of bring that connection of what home was. You know, it might be in a different place, but it's stability. It's me. I'm his dad. So we sit down. If it's in Boston, if it's in Portland, if it's in Belfast, wherever, we can. All of that goes away. We're just at the dinner table again.
You know, I have become much more hyper aware of that whole 18 years with my 16-year-olds now. Yeah. And thinking of like, boy, the last 2 years of high school have gone by in a flash. And now we just have 2 more left. So it's crazy that we're planning vacations for the last 2 years that she's with us or, you know, those kinds of things. So, yeah, it really makes you appreciate where you are with your kids. And Megan, one episode in particular really, I think, stuck out to both of us.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this particular clip and why it really struck you.
So it's the episode where we talk about Kyle Cares, which is an organization that helps students connect with their peers who are struggling or ways for those students to find resources. And what I thought was really interesting about this is that it's not only just helping the students help each other, but it's helping the teachers to understand the students as well. And it's just a way, it's that whole connection thing again.
In real life, connection in real life is the key.
I was just so blown away by how open the students were about talking about mental health and how amazing that is. Like how far our society has grown, where it's, I deal with mental health issues, big deal. Like
I have the chills.
Yes.
Yeah, because as a Gen Xer, it was like, you'll be fine, that kind of thing. But
we don't have to just rub dirt on it anymore and press those emotions down. Like we can talk about it. It's cool.
No, they were remarkable. Let's listen to that clip because I got teary-eyed a couple of times listening to the kids and the counselor as well. Mm-hmm.
I am also a co-advisor of National Honor Society. And last year, there was a group of 4 or 6 kids who went to the convention, and there was a speaker. The theme was mental health. And so all of the schools who have chapters in Maine were there. And there was a speaker named Jim Johnson. And his son committed suicide, and his family started this foundation called Kyle Cares. And he was telling us about different ways to help our school embed programming and awareness for mental health and suicide awareness. And a student, Charlie Anania, and there was another student, Charlie Moore. We went and introduced ourselves and just talked to him. Through that conversation, he sent us some information. Charlie wrote a grant with a couple other kids that we then submitted to be able to get some funds off the ground to start this group. And Active Minds is the platform that really helps. Kyle Cares is an organization who helps link you to other organizations to help your school. So Active Minds. It's been a fast growing group. It started with 3-4 kids. And now some of our meetings, we have 50, 60 plus kids. And so these kids are talking about it's okay not to be okay. And they're promoting ways to identify themselves in the Green Bandana Project. We can talk a little bit about that when they talk. But also the stigma around peer groups, right? I talked about how sometimes boys are not necessarily ones to step up. Sometimes athletes I have to be okay. And so there's different stigmas that we have learned. So the students at every single season of every single sport have spoken at one game with the opposing team as well. All the spectators, kiddos wear green for mental health. And our officers talk about what the club is, what it's about, how you can join, how you identify them. They'll talk about the green bandana. So we walk around I have a green bandana on my bag, and teachers have those things too. So it's a great group to be able to spread the awareness because kids just don't know where to go or who to ask. And so if a kiddo goes up to one of our students, that student who's in the club will bring the soft handoff. They'll come to a trusted adult. They will say, hey, this kiddo approached me. Can we have this conversation? And that's where the kids are not counseling their peers, but they are listening to them. They're being open to helping them also find their resources. That's basically the premise of that.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
What was it about that particular, segment with the counselor that stuck with you?
I love that she was bringing more awareness about Kyle Cares. It's an organization that's actually started by a friend of mine's brother. And I love that it's now in Maine and that it's in, a couple of schools. And I hope it grows more because just as she was saying, like these kids, some of them need help and some of them want to be able to help. And we're going to end the stigma. And, she goes on to say that the group has grown and grown and there's like 40 or 50 kids that like show up to every meeting. And like, can you imagine like being in high school and 50 kids being a resource to help? Like, no, like
definitely not.
Yeah.
I mean, back in our day, to use that phrase. And I love that she says their focus is just to say it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
How many times, like, I feel like growing up, it was just like, you'll be fine, put a smile on, keep going. And right now we're saying it's okay if that's not how you feel.
Right. And they're not like the kids aren't doing the counseling either. Like they're just like, oh, you need help. Here's where you can go. And so like that takes the pressure off too. Because it's like, if you're struggling and you don't know where to go, you don't necessarily want to tell your peer what you're going through, but you know that they can get you where you're supposed to go.
Right.
So it can feel overwhelming.
That soft handoff
Yes.
that she talks about.
Yeah. I remember when I was producing this, and that story came to us through another employee, Dave Eade, who's a wonderful human being and always searching to help others around him. She was so enthusiastic about the process and about the project. So enthusiastic. We had probably a 45-minute conversation in the production call, like what she would talk about and how she would talk about it. My first thought was, right, how am I going to contain her to one?
She's
enough.
a talker. Yeah.
But it's information.
Oh, it is. And she's so passionate about it.
And the kids that came in with her were also
fantastic.
So wise beyond their years. And so in touch. And the emotional intelligence that these kids had, these high schoolers, was phenomenal.
And going back to her point about just they're traditional athletes, supposed to be the tough guys, and here they were being so vulnerable and open that they struggled.
Yeah.
One in particular was really struggling because he couldn't play the sport that he grew up and loved playing. The whole episode, I mean, worth a listen. That really had so many great takeaways. And there was a part of that episode actually that really stuck out to me that I've kind of held on to as well is we started out talking about just social media and the pressure with the kids, but that parents should shoulder a little bit some of that responsibility of always being in contact. So let's play that clip that came a little bit earlier in the episode.
Parents are contacting their kids consistently through school, whether it's through text or whatever platform that they are communicating with them. Did you check this portal for college? I saw you got this grade in math class. The student doesn't even know about the grade yet. So they're checking these things. And that's very stressful for the kiddo to be able to process where they are at and kind of go through their day in a balanced, thoughtful way. So there are a lot of outside factors that are just constantly at them, just constant. And so that's detrimental to kids. And I think that they need a little bit of a break.
And once again, you said notifications. I think a huge thing is Power School. Our school uses Power School, and getting the notifications from Power School about grades constantly, as well as your parents getting them, and it's very stressful on kids. And I think that's a huge thing. not only with Charlie and I, but I can tell you that everyone in our school feels stressed getting the Power School notifications and the grade updates, and then having parents as well text about them.
Does that break your heart
Yeah.
a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was eye-opening on so many levels to me. And also just like, we share some of the responsibility. Yes, social media is constantly pinging and dinging and notifying. And, you know, turn off all those notifications on all the 15 apps you have on your phone. But for us as parents, we do not need an immediate answer on a grade or checking in about, like, taking a moment to like pause and self-reflect on why are we reaching out to our kids in the middle of the school day? It just adds another layer of stress.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, honestly, in listening to that, there was a little piece of me that felt a little guilty because I'm so not that parent.
and that's okay too. Yeah. And right, like that's not every parent, but it just, I think what it does is it speaks to the fact that kids are under more pressure than I think ever before, which leads into this segment from Rebecca Hoffman, longtime family therapist. She is phenomenal. And this was one of our early episodes. It's called Anxiety Epidemic. We've revisited it as well. But this particular clip, like, just hit me when she said, it was just really eye-opening. So let's listen and we can unpack.
First off, the pressures on kids are bigger than they've been, right? I can think back to when I was a child, and if I wanted to try a sport, let's say I was in high school and I wanted to try a new sport, I tried a new sport. Now kids are expected to be specialized and really good at sports often before they enter middle school. That's true for music. That's true for other activities, is that the pressure to be good at things, whether it's because that'll give them a leg up with getting into college, or whether that's the expectation of the community they live in or the family they live in. There's a lot of pressure to succeed early on rather than just try. The idea of just trying something out to see if you like it is not accepted as it once was. That puts a huge amount of pressure on kids when they're at an age when they should be trying and making mistakes. That's how they're learning, right? Is to try and decide they don't like something and not do it anymore, or try and maybe not excel at it, so they try something else. So they're not getting that opportunity, or it's not as widely accepted. In addition, the academic pressures are greater than they have been as well. I think there's a lot of pressure put on schools to make sure kids are really excelling across all subjects, when again, kids don't learn by getting something right the first time. They learn by making a mistake and trying again. When you add in the pandemic to that, kids lost at least 2 years of normative social development. We don't really know what the impact of that is going to be, because it's a new phenomenon to us all. And so what they lost, though, is that ability to interact with other kids on a regular basis and struggle with friendships, struggle with social situations. And so they're almost a couple years behind where the world expects them to be. And so for kids, that's feeling again like I'm behind. I have to catch up. I have to catch up in sports. I have to catch up in school. I have to catch up with social norms. And so what it's doing is putting incredible pressure on kids from a variety of angles.
So many angles.
Yeah.
And when you stop and she lists them out, sports, academics, you know, you have the pandemic in there where you had this, to Rebecca's point, this normative development was anything but normal for the kids.
Yeah.
But like, you know, what really struck me too was just this idea that just trying out a sport would be okay, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because I recently had this conversation with my 12-year-old, and he was like kind of curious about basketball in middle school. And he's like, but it's probably too late for me. And I was like, what? He's in 7th grade, but kids are, I'm not sure that they're specializing at that point, but he would feel so uncomfortable being so far behind just trying something new. At age 12, you should be able to just try something new.
Yeah.
Right?
And you should be, and she said that they're not allowed to try something just to fail,
Yeah. Which is such an important part of the whole process anyway.
Exactly.
Just, and another thing that kind of comes to mind, I think, too, is just living in a social media generation for us as parents. Like, we're posting all these big moments of our kids, and just this comparison culture adds to that pressure.
Yeah.
I saw something recently, there all this rushes going on in the colleges right now. And I saw this post from a mom that said, look, I get that pictures of these dorm rooms with the monogram pillows and everything matching, and it looks like an interior designer has come in and redone your dorm room. Mine certainly did not look like that. I went to, Bed Bath & Beyond and got a new comforter, and here you go. But just seeing that, it's like, it's okay if your dorm room looks like you just got a blanket, you have a little mini fridge, and you call it good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that when
right.
you're going on to social media, as
and you
an
see
example.
the alternative. And there's so much information is out there. There's so much to compare to.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to all of this is one of sort of a takeaway for me that we use now in every situation at our house. I mean, I can't tell you how many times this has come up, but it goes back to the feelings that we were talking about earlier, and the importance of putting words to feelings for kids. So this is was one of our episodes called the Rise of Meanness.
Our very first.
Our very, very first. And it was just a really great takeaway that we have conversations about all the time now in my house.
Connecting with your child, the not aloneness, making sure you're sharing that, whether it's your own stories of adolescence or bullying or, tormenting or whatever, how you got through it, whether it's just sitting with that feeling with your child, whether it's just validating how painful that is. So that I think that you are not alone connection piece. And then I think my second takeaway would be empathy building. This is so important for both the side of the bully and both the side of the bullied. Starting as young as you can, empathy building exercises, perspective taking, as a family talking about how other people feel, naming your own feelings in front of your kids. The building of the language around feelings and empathy is going to have some of the best, longest lasting effects. It is so powerful. It actually even, there have been studies out that found that, this is a side note, but the more children understand feelings and language around feelings, the more successful they are later in life, the more money they make, the more friends they have, the happier they are. And so empathy, building that skill is always going to have such high payoff.
I mean, if everybody had a little bit more empathy and perspective taking, she kept going back to perspective taking. And I know for us, after, talking with Tana, is if, whether it's my 5-year-old or 16-year-old, when they come to me about somebody acting or saying something, we pause and do gosh, for them to do that, they must really have something going on.
Yeah.
And particularly for my 5-year-old who, somebody might say his hair looks funny, or, little 5-year-old things. It's whoa, but for them to say that, gosh, don't you think they're probably going through something pretty rough?
Yeah.
And having those conversations way more often than, we never did because I didn't have that context.
Yeah. I remember that with my daughter. Past few years, she's 16 now, so 13, 14, 15. And she's a dancer in these really tight gaggle of girls, and they're all around the same age. And it just the whole, and she went through some problems, and there was some meanness and she kind of got ostracized, and it came down to one person who was in crisis, creating a lot of chaos. And I remember having this conversation with her, like, this isn't good, what is happening to you. Can you imagine how badly she must be feeling if she's doing this to other girls? And it totally gave her pause. It didn't solve the problem.
No, and it's not excusing bad behavior, but just getting
opening
that
up awareness.
Yes.
And it's opening up just a little insight into someone else. Like, you are hurting me. I'm sorry you're hurting so much. Something must really be bad going on if you're doing this. And you can set your boundaries, but you can't hurt me like this.
Yeah, being able to step away and look at it from like sort of that 10,000 foot view.
Yeah.
There was something else that struck me with what she said too earlier on in the episode is about like when a child comes to you with a problem, that it's very important not to go, wait, what do you mean? Somebody said that to you? Like coming in and like, this is
right there. That's my
oh, really? Who said that?
Who said that?
I don't think so, and that it's very, very important for parents not to run in with that solving thing, to like pause and say, oh, tell me more, like get curious about it versus, are you serious?
Right.
Who said that to you? Okay, well, I'm calling the teacher. Like,
don't turn into a 90s sitcom.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That and so like, there have been a couple of times, again, just like little kids who say things that don't come off as kind, and it's hard to tell what a 5 or a 6-year-old means by something. That parental instinct is to jump in and solve the issue, and really try to step back from that. Anyway, just some of our takeaways. I feel so lucky to be able to connect with these people, like these experts in so many different fields, and I'm really grateful to work with you guys on it because we're all trying to figure it out together. Just like going back to the beginning.
It's been so enlightening and so helpful, and I am so grateful to work with both of you on this. It's helping me be a better parent, which is probably my most important thing.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of good stuff cooking for season 2.
We do. We sure do. Well, thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you, Adrienne.
I got to tell you, I love working with Megan and Nate, and I'm so grateful to work with them. I'm really grateful for you, too, for listening to Raising Me and being a part of it. We do start season 2 next week with some awesome experts and thoughtful topics, diving into the things so many of us are navigating right now. I'm Adrienne Stein. This episode is edited by Megan. It's produced with Nate. Please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, consider a positive rating and review. It helps others to find the podcast and the messages as well. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.